Rotation is coming soon in the Pokemon trading card game, where a bunch of older cards are going to be removed from the standard format. And one of the biggest questions with that is what happens to Gardevoir EX? It's one of the strongest decks right now, but it's also losing the most cards out of any deck we currently have in our meta. Does it survive the meta? What does it look like going forward? Future Jet awkwardly cutting into my own intro here, but I needed to say, between the time I recorded this video originally and right now, the question about Gardevoir post-rotation has gotten even hotter because the Pokemon Company have revealed the Gardevoir EX League Battle Deck. And you probably want to have an idea of how well Gardevoir is going to fare in the new meta, especially if the League Battle Deck is something you're interested in. All right, let's go back to the video. And if you want to learn more about the League Battle Deck, I will put a link to this in the description where I have a whole video breaking down this whole list. So yeah, go back to it. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's look at some information we got from Japan with some early post-rotation lists with Gardevoir EX. The million-dollar question is, did Gardevoir survive rotation? And the early returns from Japan, they are playing in a post-rotation format. It doesn't look good. Here's a chart of the top 16 decks from a event with 256 players. And normally in pre-rotation format, these charts would always have Gardevoir in them in the top 16. No Gardevoir in sight in this one. We've got another one, 224 players. We can kind of see what the heavy hitters are. Charizard, Chien-Pao is doing well, Roaring Moon, Goldengo is starting to get a footing in here. Even Lugia kind of creeping back into the meta here with some new cards that have come out in their new sets and that will be coming out in Temporal Forces. But Gardevoir nowhere to be found on this chart. And I think the most telling thing is this tier list, which they publish every now and then, and Gardevoir is not even on the list. Now, I don't always agree with the Pokeka book. Shoutouts to Pokeka book for all of this information. I don't always agree with where they rank things, and on top of that, the Japan meta is always a little different. They play best of 1 instead of best of 3 like we do outside of Japan. Regardless, they usually cover the meta-relevant decks from our side and their side, and Gardevoir is not even on the list, which is a really bad sign. Maybe it's going to take some time for people to figure things out. The Gardevoir is losing more cards than pretty much any meta-relevant deck right now. We're losing Mirage Step Kirlia, which helped get the other Kirlias with the refinement on the board. We're losing its primary attackers in Gardevoir and Zacian. We're losing Fog Crystal for consistency and getting that energy out. Level Ball for getting all those smaller Pokemon out. We're losing Mew, which was great for grabbing items, and Battle VIP Pass is going away as well. So absolutely devastating losses for this deck. It is gaining a few new cards, such as Fluttermane, Hero's Cape, and Buddy Poffin, which are okay, but they definitely don't cover the losses of Gardevoir. And we can start with Fluttermane. This is more of a defensive Pokemon. It lets you stall for time. Your opponent's active Pokemon just has no abilities, so stuff like Comfey can't Flower Select, Cramorant can't hit you, Chien-Pao can't grab water from the deck. It's a cool way to slow your opponent down while you get set up. However, you're not really doing much damage here. Yes, you can accelerate with Gardevoir EX and get 90 damage with Flying Curse, but for the most part, you're not going to be winning games because of this attack. This is really here to stall for time. Hero's Cape is a really nice addition to the deck. It gives one of your Pokemon plus 100 HP. We still have the same general concept of piling a bunch of energy onto our attackers that do more damage based on how much damage they have, and getting an extra 100 HP is fantastic for those attackers like a Drifloon, like a Screamtail, but it may not be enough to get this deck over the top. We also have Buddy Poffin, which is actually pretty awesome. It does have the limitation where you can only bench 70 HP or less Pokemon with it, but you do get to bench 2 basic Pokemon, and pretty much your entire deck is going to be 70 HP or less, and you can use this throughout the game versus just turn 1. So this is kind of a buff for Gardevoir for the most part. With so many pieces disappearing, we're going to have to look for some new pieces to fill in the gaps. Now, this isn't necessarily a comprehensive list of all of the cards that you're going to see in these different decks, but these are cards that do show up in multiple lists that we're going to review today, and definitely cards worth considering in Gardevoir decks going forward. Drifloon is going to be a heavy hitter for the deck going forward. Balloon Blast does 30 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So normally you're going to cap out at 60 damage on Drifloon when you're attaching with Psychic Embrace, getting you to 180 damage on Balloon Blast. However, if you max this out with a Hero's Cape and you put even more damage on, you could one-shot anything in the game. Now, it's going to be probably less consistent than Gardevoir was with the brainwave attack. You don't have access to reversal energy. You have to have the tool to get that modifier, get the HP all the way up, but it's probably the best attacker in Gardevoir at this point. Bravery Charm is an incredibly important HP modifier for your attackers, such as a Drifloon. This one lets you get your HP up by 50, squeezing out a little more damage on your Drifloon so it can attack a little harder. And your Scream Tail as well, and whatever other basic attackers on there so that you can do more damage. Luxurious Cape, same idea as the Bravery Charm and the Hero's Cape. You get a plus 100 HP boost, which is absolutely massive. However, if your Pokemon gets knocked out that's wearing the cape, gets knocked out, you cough up an extra prize. So it's kind of like attacking with Zacian V, where you're going to cough up 2 prizes. You're willing to do that if you're taking a multi-prize KO, and this helps you keep up with the prizes or get the game-winning attack. But having to find the tool in the first place and then losing 2 prizes on top of that does kind of stink, but Gardevoir still needs this in the deck in order to function. Mimikyu could be in there as a more defensive option. Its Safeguard ability prevents it from getting hit from Pokemon EX and Pokemon V. Its attack is not great. Ghost Eye lets you put 7 damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon. You might be able to take out smaller Pokemon like Charmander. However, you're really using this to stall for time while you set up. The deck is a little short because of the losses of Fog Crystal and Level Ball in terms of Pokemon search, so we're squeezing in some Capturing Aroma here perhaps. Yes, you have to flip a coin. If heads, you get an evolution Pokemon. If tails, you get a basic. You're always going to get something, which is better than certain other options. I mean, Great Ball could be here as a substitute as well, but really this deck is going to be, it's always been heavy on Pokemon search, and unfortunately with the loss of Level Ball and Fog Crystal, we might have to resort to something like Capturing Aroma. Arven becomes a important card in the deck, lets you search for an item card and a tool card, and because this deck is going to be so heavily reliant on tools such as the Hero's Cape, Luxurious Cape, Bravery Charms, and so on, we are probably going to be running into a lot of Arvens to get set up in that way, whether it is getting the Buddy Puffins to set up or the tools to modify our HP. TM Evolution becomes an important tool in the deck because we don't have Kirlia Mirage Step in order to set up. So we're probably leaning into setting up, going second, and using the evolution to get 2 Kirlias on the board, and TM Evolution helps us do that. With all of the tools that are in this deck going forward, Town Store is a great way of getting that Hero's Cape, getting all of those modifiers, getting the TM Evolution, and so on. Without Gardevoir, the baby Gardevoir in the deck anymore, it does leave room for Gallade to be in the list. It's got the ability Buddy Catch, which lets you grab a supporter from your deck and put it into your hand. Great for grabbing draw supporters like an Iono or Boss's Orders for gusting. And then its attack is not bad either. Swirling Slice does 160 damage, and you get to move an energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. It's okay at taking out single prizers, but you're not really going to be taking out any multi-prizers unless it's like a Squawkabilly or something. Nevertheless, being able to grab a supporter of your choice can be very nice. Here's an example of a Gardevoir EX list. We've got the Raltses and the Refinement Kirlia. Of course, we now have a 4-4 line of these because we don't have the Mirage Step Kirlia in the deck anymore. Still have 2 Gardevoir EXs in the deck. We also have, this one's a little more of a defensive build. I kind of don't like this one, to be honest, because of the fact that it's got the Mimikyu and the Fluttermane, which are here, this one to block damage from EXs and Pokemon V, and then the Fluttermane to shut down abilities on active Pokemon. Pokemon, but it is a way of building the deck. We do see the Buddy Poffin is in here. We got a Capturing Aroma is a new card to try and just add a little more Pokemon search. We do have the new Hero's Cape here as well, and then Arven, a big count of Arven, so we can grab all of these tools. Another noteworthy thing here, there is no more reversal energy in the deck because this one is not running any stage 2s. This second list is a little more conventional. It basically swaps out the Mimikyu with another Drifloon, which I personally feel a little more comfortable with because the Drifloon, I think, is probably the best attacker in the deck going forward. We still have Screamtail here. We also see an appearance of Gallade, but we don't have any reversal energy here. Gallade can attack with a reversal energy, but this deck only has 9. We still do have the Fluttermane here for stalling for time, shutting off active Pokemon's abilities. Now, the A-Spec they have chosen to go with here is Prime Catcher, being able to gust up a target. Yeah, it's still really good. Now, they don't have the same amount of modifiers. The Hero's Cape is really nice in Gardevoir, but they've chosen to have themselves a little bit better of an opportunity with sniping out targets, which I'm not going to blame any deck for not running Prime Catcher. It's that good. The weirdest choice in this is the damage pump, and I kind of get it. You get to move 2 damage counters off of a Pokemon to another Pokemon. You can spread it out however you want, but it allows you to move damage around in a way that lets you then attach more energy with Gardevoir. You're usually going to use this to move damage off of Drifloon or Screamtail so they can attack a little harder. We also have the Cryptomaniac's Deciphering. That was the original translation. I know this goes by a different name at this point, but this lets you put any 2 cards of your choice from your deck to the top of your deck, and then you can use Radiant Greninja, discard an energy, or use Kirlia, discard an energy, or discard anything, and then draw into those 2 pieces. So that's an interesting tech choice as well. Cool, we've got the Forest Seal Stone making an appearance as a V-Star power, lets you grab a card of your choice. And we also have Silene here, which you flip 2 coins, and if heads, for each heads, you get to put a card from your discard pile back into your deck. This is great for recovering stuff like your Bravery Charms and your Luxurious Capes, so you can increase the damage output on your attackers. This third example is probably the most vanilla. It does not have the Fluttermane or the Mimikyu. It's just straight up aggro with the Drifloon and the Screamtail. I think this is probably where my head is most likely at for a Gardevoir build. It does have a bunch of Great Balls in here for Pokemon search as well, instead of messing around with things like the Capturing Aroma. No Nest Balls in this deck. Have there been any Nest Ball? No. Oh, 2 Nest Balls in the first one. I'm sorry for the blurry images. I actually had to dig to the website, which didn't have big images, to try and find some good Gardevoir lists. So if it's looking a little blurry, I apologize for that. We do have Great Balls here. Otherwise, this is pretty similar to the other lists that we've seen. We've got the Hero's Cape in here as well for protecting, well, letting your attackers do more damage. Yeah, the biggest difference here, Great Balls and removing the defensive options in Mimikyu and Fluttermane. One more vanilla Gardevoir list here, this time with 1 new attacker, and that is Mimikyu EX. In case you're wondering what this is, basic Pokemon, Psychic, 190 HP. It has the attack Energy Burst, where for a Psychic Energy and 2 colorless, does 30 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. If you accelerate with Gardevoir all the way up to its limit of 180 damage, you got 9 energy on there, and Mimikyu EX is going to do 270 damage before accounting for your opponent's energy. In matchups like Charizard EX, where they have 2 energy on them, more often than not, you are going to be able to one-shot a Charizard EX. Now, the trade-off here, it's kind of dependent on how much energy your opponent has. You also have to put a ton of energy on this thing in order to hit some of those really high numbers. So this is only really useful as a end-of-game attacker, but it is something to consider. The last one, and we're going to talk about Raging Bolt in a separate video because it has its own builds, but there are builds of Gardevoir and Raging Bolt as an attacker. And the big thing here is its attack Extreme Accent, where it does 70 damage for each basic energy you discard this way. And this is a really cool combo, and now you're going to have to run 3 different types of energy, But if you imagine using Sada's Vitality to get energy onto the Raging Bolt, and you can also use Sada's Vitality to power up Screamtail on top of that, where you've got the fighting and the lightning energy on Raging Bolt to cover that cost, and then you use Gardevoir to put psychic energy on your psychic Pokemon, then you discard that energy with Raging Bolt so it can attack and take massive one-hit KOs. It is a very interesting concept, and maybe this is the way Gardevoir is played going forward, as actually just backup for Raging Bolt. I don't know, but this is a really interesting concept, and one that will definitely be explored based on what I've been seeing with the results. Raging Bolt, there's a ton of different ways of building Raging Bolt, and Gardevoir is one of them. There we go. That is an early look at Gardevoir EX. Things are looking shaky, to say the least. It hasn't been performing to the level that it once was, at least in Japan. It's kind of unfortunate that Gardevoir is probably going to slip a little bit in power level, making room for new decks to shine, but I would not count out Gardevoir just yet. I think that its ability is so busted, and Gardevoir is such a popular Pokemon that I think that with time, the Pokemon Company will provide Gardevoir with the support that it needs so that it can shine once again. But what say you? Are you looking forward to Gardevoir coming down a peg? Are you heartbroken that Gardevoir is going to be losing its footing here a little bit? I'm a little sad. It's a deck that I really didn't like for a long time, and only when I started training for Toronto Regionals where I was like, oh, this deck is actually really sick. I really like it a lot, and I almost played it to Toronto Regionals. Ended up going with Miraidon instead. I don't regret that choice, but Gardevoir is a deck that in its current form I absolutely love, and it's kind of sad seeing these lists because they're not quite it. They are not what I want for Gardevoir going forward, but fingers crossed that it will return to glory someday. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.